Murders are unsettling no matter what, but some are worse than others. These were horrific murders, so heinous it was nearly beyond comprehension. Years went by without an arrest or even a reliable suspect, which raised doubts that persisted for decades after the horrifying killings that baffled communities and police alike. Number 1. Jack the Ripper terrorized London. More than a century ago, the most infamous serial killer in London stalked and terrorized the East End, preying on prostitutes. At least 5 women were killed and disfigured by him before he became known as Jack the Ripper. In 1888, fear increased when the bodies started piling up close to one another over the course of 3 months. News of a second female victim sent the community into a state of horrified to the point of panic, as the Morning Post put it at the time. The murder was described as barbarous, and the method of execution as too horrible for description by the local newspaper. Upon discovering the suspect's signature, graphic murderous manner, and knife skills, local officials initially questioned if the man was a physician or a butcher. Author Dave Yost, who examines the 5 deaths in his book Elizabeth Stride and Jack the Ripper, claims that the victims of the infamous Whitechapel murders, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, all had their throats slashed, and the majority had their stomachs cut and their organs torn out before being dumped on the streets. According to the FBI, who examined the case in 1988 at the request of a film production firm, each victim was a known heavy drinker. They were all quickly eliminated in the wee hours of the morning because they were easily accessible. Police never managed to identify the culprit, even with all eyes on the case. The identity of the murderer has been the subject of several amateur and expert historians and criminologists' conjectures, but it seems Jack the Ripper carried his mystery to the afterlife. Number 2. The Black Dahlia's grisly death captured headlines. A mother and her child were stopped in their tracks by the sight. There was a woman resting a few feet off the pavement. She was slashed in half neatly at the waist, and she was completely bloodless. Newspapers eventually dubbed the 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, who was slain in 1947, the Black Dahlia, in part because of her dark hair and apparent preference for black attire. Her murder made headlines the moment it happened. Authorities alleged that Short, a native of Massachusetts who had traveled to California in search of celebrity, was drained dry before being abandoned in a vacant lot in a Los Angeles residential neighborhood. According to FBI records, her body looked like it had been properly dissected. How the budding actor came to such a horrific end is unknown. Numerous individuals have taken credit for the well-publicized crime. Nevertheless, the matter remains unresolved, as none of the confessors seem to be telling the truth. Number 4. The Zodiac Killer taunted police with clues. This Zodiac Killer wasn't your typical killer. He didn't want to be in the spotlight. On the contrary, he appeared to relish it, leaving a path of death in his wake, and playing cop tricks with cryptic letters and clues. In 1968 and 1969, the Zodiac Killer killed 5 individuals in Northern California, apparently at random. Though it was never verified, he told investigators in letters that there were hundreds more victims. In December 1968, 2 adolescents were shot and killed in a parking lot, setting off his violent rampage. 2 more persons were shot in a parked automobile around 7 months later, though one of them made it out alive. At that point, local newspapers began receiving letters purporting to be the ones behind the killings, according to the San Francisco Examiner, which had obtained the enigmatic messages. According to the publication, the letters included a key to assist readers in figuring out the killer's identity, as well as coded words outlining his motivation. "This is the Zodiac speaking," he stated in a letter dated August. He said, "I like killing people because it is so much fun," according to FBI documents. As humans are the most dangerous animals of all, it is more enjoyable than taking down wild game in the forest. The Zodiac Killer stabbed 2 more people in late September, after authorities were unable to decipher the code that revealed his identity. Of the two victims, one lived and the other did not. The Examiner claims that approximately 2 weeks later, the murderer struck once more, this time killing a 29-year-old cab driver. A few days later, the Zodiac mailed a section of the bloodied shirt of his most recent victim to the Chronicle newspaper. No suspects in the case have been proven as of yet. The inquiry is still underway, according to the San Francisco Police Department. Number 4 and 5 are rappers. Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G. were gunned down 6 months apart. The late 1990s saw the shocking murders of rap icons Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G., who happened to be shot dead roughly 6 months apart. The murders took place during a period of fierce competition between two rival record labels. For their respective record labels, both rappers were the top artists. Many claimed the killings were evidence that music feuds had reached an unhealthy level. Shakur was the first person slain on September 13, 1996, in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. The 25-year-old superstar's Death Row record company and its rival, Bad Boy, were at odds at the time. Christopher Wallace, popularly known as the Notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls, or Biggie, was assassinated in a similar manner 6 months later while working for Bad Boy. The rapper was leaving a Los Angeles party for the music industry when he was shot dead in a drive-by. The FBI investigated Biggie's murder, but dropped the investigation in 2005, claiming that the two superstars were pals when they were signed to Bad Boy. After Biggie gained prominence and Tupac was jailed on charges of rape, the friends became less close. Afterwards, Tupac joined Death Row. It's unknown if the rivalry contributed to either of the deaths. Police were baffled by both incidents, partly due to recalcitrant witnesses. The murder riddles spawned a plethora of speculations, one of which is an unverified notion that the two rappers are still alive and staged their own deaths. The megastar's friends and family are still in mourning. In an Instagram video posted in March, Sean Diddy Combs honored his late friend Biggie on the 20th anniversary of the artist's passing. He remarked, "We're going to think back on him today because we miss him. And 20 years later, all wounds heal with time, but this one hasn't healed yet."